Okay. Hi, everyone. And today I will speak about my master relation. And I studied about African infrastructure. And in particular, I studied about the resilience of every nation that have against the extreme events, in particular the climatic ones. For doing that, I have to face three main issues. The first one was understand how the climate is changing and which are the impact of these events caused by the climate change on the infrastructure. Second one, I have to study the resilience and understand how it is defined and which are the different methods for calculating it. And in the end, of course, I have to study which are the infrastructure present on the Africa. So understand how they are distributed on the continent and find some indicators that allows me to describe globally all the continents. For example, if I studied the number of the ports, it is not an indicator that I can use globally for all the countries because there are some countries that do not have sea, so they given't a complete figure of what is the nation in that moment. First of all, I started by the climate. The climate is changing, everyone is noticing these effects, and the IPCC, the International Panel on Climate Change, studied with its reports how the climate is changing. And in its fifth report, he presented four different climate changing scenarios that shows which are the consequences of our comportment behaviors on the earth and possible scenarios for the future if we are improving our policies to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions, or what will happen if we are continue to behave like now. So it's divided in four principal scenarios. The first one is the RCP 2.6, that is the best one because is the scenario in which we stop in 20 years all the emissions of greenhouse gases and we will reach the net zero, so zero emissions, net zero emissions. And the other scenarios are presenting a worst situation until reach the RCP 8.5 is the worst at all. And some scientists define it like business as usual, which is saying that, okay, until 2050, we will not change our behavior and we will keep living like now. So continue with the emissions and they will keep growing continuously. And this is what will happen. So all the ice will melt, the sea will become too acid, and the temperature will increase of 4 degrees respect the pre-industrial levels. The names of the scenario are based on the radiative forcing. The number 2.6 is the value of radiative forces. This represents how much energy we on the Earth add to all the system in our anthropogenic emissions. So we are working, we are emitted some greenhouse gas, and so we are adding energy to the system Earth. Also, this is always referring to the pre-industrial system, so before the Industrial Revolution. In the last report of the IPCC, this is printed, I think, in November, if spread in November, it presents also the socioeconomic scenarios. This is the same of the scenario presented in the fifth report, but add also some important information about the boundary conditions. So it gives information about the population, about the GDP, and create like a more complete vision of the future. Which are the impact of the climate changing? We have the impact on everything on the Earth. In country present in Africa, they are the poorest ones, so the impacts are more evident. We have impacts on the food safe, the FAO said that since 2012, the number of malnourished people increased of 46%. And this situation is going to getting worse and worse because all of the droughts and heavy rains that destroy all the fields. And this also impacts the health of the population. We have also natural impacts like all the landslides, and this create also problem on the infrastructure, like the transportation one. So like imagine a road that will not be used by the population because there is a lot of water. And also on the energy infrastructure. Imagine also the temperature is increasing of 3 or 4 degrees, and this provoke an increment of population that using cooling like air condition. And so this increase the demand of energy, and we don't have enough energy for supply all this. The main object of this study is the resilience. Speaking about resilience is a bit complicated because there is a lot of definition of it, and consequently a lot of metric for measure it. We adopt one in the study for which a country is considered resilient if it's able to resist to extreme event, limit the damage, and can guarantee the working of the critical infrastructure, also in a limited way, in order to protect the population. And it's able to reconstruct what is destroyed, learning for what happened. For example, imagine like in the USA, there is a lot of tornado, and the houses are building in a special way that can not produce so much damage if this is just destroyed by a tornado. So this is what I mean with the resilience. And we create a resilience index which allows us to measure it. We create like a ranking between the nations in Africa that say which country is more affected if an extreme event happens. And for doing this, we evaluate the distance of the energy mix. I will show you what I mean with this, and the percentage of unpaved roads, unpaved runways of the airports, and the access of water, internet, and mobile network. We choose this imagining this situation like a country that is isolated from all the rest of the world by an extreme event that can be a political one or also a climatic and natural one, and they have to survive in a way or another. So this is the most important thing that is needed in that moment for a country. Like if people don't have access to water, they have to move. But if the roads are unpaved, maybe they are unageable, so people cannot reach the water. And also we need a way to communicate, not only for call our mom and say we are okay, but also for coordinate all the health. So this is the most important things. Obviously, this is a study that we have made at very big scale. So considering all the Africa, this methodology can be also improved and modified, adapted for a more small size of a problem. Finally, there is the data collection, because for populate this index, we need a lot of data. Africa, the big problems of Africa is that a lot of data are missing. Maybe they are aggregated or incomplete. And for this reason, we worked only on 32 countries and not for all the countries of Africa, because we don't have the data. But in the moment that all this will be available, we can use this and extend this study for all the countries. We collected not only the data that is needed for our index, like the energy production mix, the percentage of paved and paved roads and airports, and also the access to water and to internet, but also more data that are available for everyone, like an open source, for everyone who wants to improve this or can do another studies about this. And so we collect also information about other transport infrastructure, about energy infrastructure, ICT infrastructure, and also hydraulics one. For the first term, which is the distance of the energy mix, we use the compositional dataset. What we study is the distance between the energy mix of a country, so what is from which sources that country take its energy, so the coal, natural gas, and the renewable ones, and a target which they provided by the International Energy Agency. And these targets are targets that allow that country, they are specific for every country, that allow that country to reach a specific goal, like to stay under the 2 degrees of increment of the temperature, or stay under 1.5 degrees of increase. And so we evaluate which are the actual energy mix and which is the target provided us by the agency. For doing that, we use the compositional dataset. These datasets are defined by a vector of positive components that if we sum up all of them, we reach the unity of the 100%. And if we take one of these components alone, they lose every meaning. Okay, like 32% or 22 of biofuels, but if we don't put it in the context, it don't have any sense. With this brand of the mathematics, we can do also operations with the vectors. One of these is the subcomposition. The subcomposition allow us to take only the components that we need for a study. But if we take only one of that, the total is not more 100%. So we need the closure, that is another operator, that brings the total to 100% by redistribution. It's like proportion. And the more interesting things in this kind of dataset is the Aitchison distance, which allow us to define the distance between the two vectors. And this is defined like that, in that formula. In particular, for every country, what we consider. For the fossil sources of energy, like the coal, natural gas, and oil, the value given from the agency, from the IEA, was considered like maximum limit that cannot be exceeded. It's a maximum. If a country produces more, you think that they are polluting more the environment, more of what they have to for reach that goal. And for the renewables one, so biofuels, hydro, solar, aeolic energy, and nuclear one, the target put by the IEA is a lower target, so is the minimum to be achieved. If it's more, it's better. So for every country, we created a small program in R for do this operation, for which each country we do the subcomposition in order to study only those elements, those components that are over if they are fossil or under if they are renewable. And we close this vector. So we study the distance only between the elements that they are not good enough. And for every country, we do this. And we do this for also every kind of target. So for the reference one, so like references meaning by the IEA, like the goal to remain like that, like we are now. So keep the emissions of greenhouse gases and CO2 like we are now in 2022. And also for the +2 or +1.5. And we do this for every country, and which we reach these results. The darkest one are the countries that they are far more far from the target, and the clear one is which are closer. And we evaluate normalize these values between 0 and the worst in order to have values that go between 0 and 1. This also is representative of which the country can produce. Like in the North Africa, they are the greatest producers of oil, and they use a lot of it. So they are very far from target, because yes, they have also renewable sources of energy, but they produce and use a lot of oil because they have a lot. So this is why they are so distant. Once we calculated all the distance for all the country, we have our index, because like is written in the short box, we can calculate it is like from the distance of the energy mixes from the target of what exactly is in the country, and all the percentage that go to 0 to 1. So we have an index that goes from 0 to 6 and represent how much the nation, among all the others that we have studied, are more needed of improvement in their infrastructure for resist to climate change events. This can be used like an indicator to say a country, okay, be careful because you are the more in danger between all the others. Not that, I don't know, Egypt, that is one of the clearer, are unsafe, but there is country in which we have to work more and faster, especially. And for see if this study doing like that respond to the reality, we have done a case of study in the Mozambique, in which we have done also a forecast of what will happen in 2050. Why we studied the Mozambique? Because it's one of the worst country in our ranking, and also is one of the worst country in more or less every ranking present that they can make in the world, because it's like the 60% of the population live about the poverty limit. They don't have complete access to water, like only the 30% of the population have it, and also to electricity. And also they have a lot of problems regarding the political tensions and corruption. Is one of the more corrupted country in the world because of a lot of changing of presidents, golpe, and this kind of stuff. But also for was the thing that are not so good enough. There is also the climate changing that give like its part, because in Mozambique in 40 years we have more than 20 cyclones and floods, and so the population is already under the level of poverty, and then there is also these events that they worsen the quality of life. So we wanted to see if there is a possibility for this country to redeem, and we discovered that there is a lot of improvement and projects that are made on this country, especially financed by foreign nation, Chinese first of all. And so they see that by 2050 there will be a lot of new energy productions, like a new hydroelectric or new renewable energy, and also the rate of the access of water is growing. So we use this forecast to create what will be the Mozambique in 2050. And we recalculated the distance and all the index. And we see that in 2050, the situation will improve a lot, obviously, if all the project will be finished. And this is showing that also a small improvement in the infrastructure can bring huge results. And this study showed that Africa's situation is very poor and needs a lot of maintenance. And aggregating all the data, we can discover that the countries with less access to mobile network are also the country with less access to electricity grid. So all is connected in this continent. And for doing this, a lot of investments are made for improve this situation, especially by Chinese industries that by now they are controlling more than 70% of the data that are circulating in Africa. But this can also seem like Africa is like colonizing China is colonizing Africa again, and they also construct a lot of infrastructure there for contract that they are not so good for African country, but more for China. But despite that, also in hydraulic infrastructure, there is like a big problem in Africa for which the water is present in the image down. You can see is like the map of the presence of water underground in Africa, and Angola is this one in the center, in the middle is the darkest one, is one of the country in Africa that have the less access to water. The people don't have water, but the underground is full of it. But there is a very big lack of infrastructure that allow the pumping out of the water and cleaning it. So this show that in Africa there is a big paradox for what the problems are known and they also know how to solve it, but is missing the actuation of it. And the problem is that more they delay the actuation of this, more the situation will not improve. So extreme event will happen more frequently, and the situation is getting worse and worse. So like they have a short time to do this, and they have to improve it. And but this is my study. So thank you all for the lecture, and thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Does the camera work? I don't know whether the camera. I don't think the camera works. But okay, thank you. You can hear me. I don't know whether there are any questions. Do you hear me? Can you hear me? No.
Yes, I can hear you. Not so good, but I can hear.
Okay. Okay, now I would like to ask the audience, not only the audience here, but also you have a lot of audience online. So, any question? I have one question that I would like to ask. It is a little bit. You only looked at data of each country, I think. No?
I listen you badly. Can you repeat it slowly? Sorry.
You only looked at the scale of countries.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yes. Only Mozambique we enter a bit inside, but using the same model.
Yeah. Is it important if there are regional differences, or would it be very different if you look at more region or something? So it is a little bit the scale effect. Okay, so is it important or not to look also at more local differences between regions within a country?
Yes, but I think that the model have to be a bit rearranged, because right now it's like constructed for a big scale. If we enter inside, maybe we can add some information, like for example, the target of energy Okay, the AI provide from all Africa, but also provide for regions because, like I said, in the north there is a lot of oil. So maybe the value only for the north of Africa of the target can be higher, considering that that country use a lot of oil. No, so maybe some data can change on it, and but I think that the methodology can be the same. We can use these also.
Yeah. I guess the methodology is the same, but the data are different.
Yes, the reference, the target will change.
Yeah, yeah. And but I don't know whether the outcome would be very different or not. That was a little bit my question.
Yes, it can depend. It depends. Like in zones of Africa in which they don't have a fossil, they cannot put fossil inside in the target, no, because it's no sense. So they are very different between the north of the south. Of also, if we consider, I don't know, Italy don't have any kind of fossil, only a bit of gas. So it changed.
Yeah,
Also, if we consider a country on the sea, we can consider also the ports inside the infrastructure.
yeah, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions?
I have one.
Okay.
Hi,
Daniel?
Mariana. Thank you
Yeah.
for your presentation. I would like to ask you regarding the variables that you used in the index.
Okay.
How did you or why did you choose those? And if, for example, you thought about it's not completely related, but the energy, food, and water nexus that could also like the importance of water and energy in the food security. That is a topic that there like some people research on it, and if it could be applicable in that aspect with the resilience index, it should be incorporated.
Okay. Once one question at a time. Okay. For the first one, I choose that like for what I imagine. No, imagine a country isolated from everything. No, and we imagine that these are the most basic, in reality, also most easy data to find because imagine we are working with African country that maybe they don't speak English, they don't speak French, they have their only language, so it's become a bit complicated find all of the data. So we use that in very big scale, and we tried to use all kind of infrastructures. So not only the transport one, but also like the hydraulic one, and we tried to convert to how to say to use all of them, no? So give a picture of the most various possible scenarios that we can have, no? So like if electricity stops, which the country will respond, no? Which is the effect on the others. Or if we don't have any more water, which will happen. Like in the moment, I'm watching from the war in Ukrainian. Like here in Italy, we don't have any more gas from Russia, and so we are rationating the energy. No, so one of the goals of the Agenda 2030 from this development is one that the country should have most value possible kind of energy sources, not rely on one only type of energy. So, like for the energy, we decided to use them all, for achieve also the goal. And this is why the main. I don't know if I answered to your question.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, and the second one, can you repeat, please?
Yeah, it's if you have like regarding water, energy, and food security nexus, if you think that this like that approach could be interesting to put it also in or mix it with the index.
Yes, that can be mixed inside. Maybe not at so big scale. Maybe if you want to study a single country, you can use this inside, like quality of the water and this kind of things can be important also because I think you know better than me that also if the temperature will increase, the sea and the in general the water will become more acidic. So this have consequence on the food and on the fish and on this kind of stuff. So we can, I think that we can introduce this. We have a bit study of it, but maybe we can change the how the index is created. Maybe focalize only on one kind of in this case infrastructure, so on the hydraulic one, and see which are the consequences. So we can study only hydraulics for a country and say, I don't know, what is the access of the water, and this is water is safe or not, and also this is affect, I don't know, agriculture and then the food security of the people. I think that I will study and use it is like that. But it's my idea, I think. What I like of this model that we managed to create is that it can be added, it can be used and modified more or less for everything. I presented it here in Italy to a researcher that used it for a geologic study in the composition of a mountain. He was studying inside and he used it and evaluated this, like the composition of the mountain inside of a compositional vector. And so in relation of what exactly would it be, and also by the pollution that there is inside of this material, like in the water, no? So they study it like that. So it's only like a method that can be used for more or less everything.
Okay, that was. Are there anyone else who wants to ask something? Doesn't seem to be. Okay, thank you, Mariana, for your talk, and thank you for the audience. And in theory, each Thursday we have another seminar. Next Thursday is the holiday, so we don't have seminar next Thursday. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Have a nice day.